Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Andrea Alboletta with First 5 LA. Can you let me know if you can hear me okay by just typing in the chat box to let me know if my sound is okay? I'm not getting any chatter in the chat box. If you can hear me, this is Andrea Alboletta with First 5 LA. Just trying to do a sound check. If my volume is okay and you can hear me clearly, can you let me know in the chat box, please? Thank you. Nothing. No. Were we supposed to press something? I remember when we called it to press something to talk. Yeah. No. I'll do it one more time. Hi, everyone. If you can hear me, can you either raise your hand in the dash or send me a message in the chat that you can hear me? I'm going to have Amy come in or log in to see if she can. Okay, so if you can hear us, please give us a few minutes so we can figure out how to connect. Are they able to unmute them to see if they can speak? I can't. Maybe we can. Oh, they can hear us. Oh, looks like you can hear us. Great. So, sorry about that. We are just having a little technical difficulties and weren't sure why people weren't sure if people could hear us. So we'll just get started. And so thank you. I'm Andrea Alboletta. This is the Public Procurement Consultant Informational Webinar. Thank you so much for attending. I'm joined by our Director of Contract Administration and Purchasing, and I'll allow her to introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. This is Jennifer, as Andrea said, Director of Contract Administration and Purchasing.
So let's just get started. We are going to, here's an overview of today's agenda. Jennifer will actually go through the overview of our agency as well as the project overview. And then I will go into the application process along with reviewing what our selection process looks like and some important dates. Before we get started though, if you do have any questions about any of the slides or what we're talking about, feel free to enter the questions into the question box in the dash. I'm able to see it, and then if we're able to answer the question right then and there, we'll address it. If not, there's a section at the end where we'll address all of your questions. And any questions we can't seem to answer on this webinar, we'll definitely follow up with you via email and to all of the attendees. So with that, let's get started.
All right, so this is Jennifer again, and I will be providing a little bit more of an overview of our agency. I feel that context is so critical to this project. First 5 LA is a mission-driven organization. We were created to support children prenatal to age 5 and their families. So that's our target population. So it might be quite different than some of the other organizations where their primary function is purchasing. We do some purchasing to support the internal operations of the organization, but most of our dollars, our funding goes towards grantees or for consultant work in order to support our mission. We are a public agency, and we do need to adhere to our adopted strategic plan. And we refer to that as our fiscal year 2015-2020 strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan that focuses on 6 key areas: research and development, public policy and advocacy, service delivery, system improvement, provider training, community capacity building, and communication. Now, when we adopted this strategic plan in 2015, we made 2 notable changes that I wanted to talk about today. One is our desire for partnerships. Prior to 2015, we went about our work in a very traditional method where staff would approach the work in a way where they would be designing and developing these programs, issue an RFP, contract out for the work, and then start the project. I think the way in which we've changed that approach is that we're trying to identify partners early. These could be funded or non-funded partners, but we find them critical because we don't want to take the go-it-alone approach. So we bring other partners to the table that we find critical to the success of our mission, and we do co-develop, co-design certain projects together. So that's one key change that we've experienced in this current strategic plan. The second change is our pivot to policy and systems change. Now, prior to 2015, our primary focus was direct services. We were funding, for example, organizations to fill preschool slots. Now, as our revenues began to decline, we saw that that was not sustainable. And we've pivoted to focusing on how we change policy and what we need to do to change systems to more effectively serve our target population. So an example of that would be looking at the LA County systems. How do these departments work together? What needs to be improved or enhanced in the system in order to serve our target population? So those are 2 key areas of context that are really important, and that has not been addressed in our current procurement policy. So that's something that we're going to have to look at as we endeavor to kick off this project. The other thing is we are currently working to refine our current strategic plan. So there's an organization-wide effort to do this. But the key is that we're refining the strategic plan. I don't anticipate significant changes to our strategies or areas of focus. I do anticipate that we will be perhaps more focused in our strategies and in our approach, but we will likely not see a significant shift in the upcoming strategic plan. And we do want to use the progress of that refinement work as an input to our procurement project. So as that comes in, we have strategy refinement teams. They're working on refining these strategies in our strategic plan. So as that information comes in, we would use that as an input. I would feed that to the consultant, and that would help us further refine our procurement policy. And before we go on to the next slide, I just wanted to provide a quick overview of our department, the Contract Administration and Purchasing Department. We are a staff of 9, and we have roughly on average a portfolio of anywhere between, I would say, 250 to 300 contracts in any given fiscal year. And although we have purchasing in our department name, that's largely in an area that we still need to build up. Right now, our focus is on policy and process changes, but at some point in the future, we will have to develop systems and processes to support the purchasing function, which is focused on purchases of commercial goods and services. And I wanted to also provide you with a little bit of an overview of the project. As mentioned in the RFQ, we are looking to update our procurement policy and related processes to better align with our current strategic direction, which I mentioned earlier in the slide, and our org structure to enable more effective and efficient implementation of the strategic plan, while upholding First Federal Aid's values and the values of public procurement. What we have defined in scope for this project is to work on the procurement policy revision. It's a 3-page policy. Process improvements for procurement and contracting. Now we do intend to work on policy and process improvements for contracting because the procurement policy does touch upon certain contractual requirements and thresholds. And the third piece is really more about clarification of roles and responsibilities and decision rights. We want to make sure that it's aligned to our current org structure. We did go through an organizational alignment when we adopted our last strategic plan, and we have to be mindful of the new positions that were added, the new layers, and right-size the decision rights to go along with our org structure. What we've currently defined to be out of scope are e-signatures and electronic workflows. Now, we may find that will support the project to be so that our processes are more efficient and effective. And so the IT department may be asked to step in if there's a window of opportunity at that time to support us with streamlining workflows electronically. But what we definitely want to do is map out a refined process first before we can ask them to streamline that electronically. So that is something that may move into scope depending on whether or not they have the bandwidth to support us. The second thing is web invoicing, which really happens more at the monitoring level. And then the third piece is centralized purchasing. As I mentioned earlier, we really need to strengthen the purchasing arm of our department. And To the degree that we can address our current purchasing issues in our policy, we do want to do that, but what we're not looking to do is set up purchasing systems, purchasing policies and processes as our primary focus for this project. And moving on to the success criteria, we've defined success to be an updated procurement policy that enables more effective implementation of our strategic plan, business processes that improve efficiencies, and a policy and process that reflect best practices while upholding our legal requirements and public procurement values. And a quick note about our legal requirements. You know, all that we're required to do with regards to our policy is to have a policy that's adopted by our board at a public hearing. And we will be working closely with our legal counsel to ensure that any pieces of our policy that are required to stay can stay in that policy, and anything that we could refine, we'll have to work on. Let's see here. We will also have to, going back to what's in scope, we will also have to look at any related policies to see if we need to update those policies as well. So for example, we have a separate appeals policy. It's a one-page policy. We want to take a quick look at that to make sure that we don't have any other changes there. If so, we want to take that to the board together. Other policies that might be related or documents that we have to review are our bylaws. And we do have some policies that we are looking at sunsetting, which are policies that go in depth into how we go about selecting contractors and grantees. So that's something that we want the consultant to take a look at as well. Now, in the solicitation, we do state that in our desired qualification, that we are looking for someone with general knowledge on best practices in procurement in the philanthropy sector. I really want to clarify that it's fine if you do not have that. You know, we stuck that under desired qualifications, but I understand that, you know, if you've been in the public sector for some time, you may not have that knowledge in general in philanthropy. I highly encourage you to think about applying regardless of that, because we do want to partner with the selected consultant to identify how we can get that information. We do want to make sure that we are aligned to public procurement values, but we also want to learn from some best practices that philanthropy have shared, and that's something that we'll work with you on. And what we might want to do is consider asking the consultant to propose a way to obtain that information. Again, we intend to partner with you on this, and if you have it, that's great. If you don't, that's fine.
So a question just came in, and the question is, can you please clarify out of scope item number 3, who is CAP and what is their role in setting procurement policy and process? Okay, so CAP, I apologize, is the acronym for our department, Contract Administration and Purchasing. We often refer to ourselves as CAP. And what is their role in setting procurement policy and process?
Oh yeah, so CAP, our department, is going to be the driver and the department responsible for the revisions to the procurement policy and all associated processes. And when I say associated processes, we have different processes for each procurement type. So for example, we have an informal bid process. although that's pretty straightforward and simple, we do want to look at that process. We have an exceptions process. We have an RFQ, RFP process. So we would be looking at the different types of procurement methods and looking at refining those associated processes in this project.
So there were also, and thank you, Jennifer, it doesn't look like any other clarification is needed on that. If there is, please let us know in the questions box. We also had a couple of other questions come in, and some of these I will, so the first one is, what is the budget and time frame for this project? Do you have information on purchasing dollar volume? And then there is actually a multi-part question. It sounds like, when is the due date? Can I get a copy of the solicitation? Are grants competitive? So I'm going to answer, are grants competitive? Yes, so this is an open solicitation, so we are open to, it is a competitive process, so it is open to the public, and therefore we are going to evaluate all qualified applications. Where can you get a copy of the solicitation? It is online on our website at first5la.org under the Funding Center. Due date, I'll get to that at the end of the webinar. Can the work be done virtually?
Yes, we do anticipate needing the consultant to come in from time to time for in-person meetings and presentations.
And the other questions that were posed, I believe these can be addressed by reading the full RFQ. So if not, please go ahead and, well, how about this? Read the RFQ first, and if there are further clarifications, then feel free to email me directly. In the meantime, we'll move forward and keep going with the webinar.
Yes, and please feel free to connect with us if you have any additional questions as you review the RFQ. On to the next slide. So I'm going to go over the status of the project. We do have an internal project team that's made up of a project manager. She is there to keep us on track, on target, and to handle all logistics. I am the sponsor for this project. We call that a project sponsor here. Andrea will also provide us with support, as well as my department staff. And we do have the executive vice president that will be the eyes and ears for the executive team, and we'll be sharing updates to that team throughout the project. And we also have a project advisor, that's my boss. He's the senior director of administration. So we do have an internal project team in place, and we do anticipate that the selected consultant will be part of that project team. We have kicked off the project. So we're in phase 1 of this project, where we're calling it Project Kickoff. We have developed a high-level project plan. Now, this plan was developed in partnership with another consultant that we had on board last year. Their focus was not procurement, it was more project management. So they supported us with developing a high-level project plan and approach. And what I mean by approach is just how we're going to go about executing on this project. And so one of the key decisions that have been made about this approach is that we're going to tackle the policy before we tackle processes, because that will affect how we refine our processes. We have also created a draft communication plan, and really this communication plan is how we bring along our stakeholders, particularly internal staff, the directors and the executive team. And we do have a very high-level board and staff engagement plan completed. So we've got some work already completed. We do intend to share all of this with our selected consultant and provide a lot more context and background on this project as we're getting ready to work with the consultant. Let's see if there's anything else here. All right, so now I'm going to hand it off to Andrea to go over the application process.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So I will take this time to talk about what the application entails. I'll go through kind of each document and highlight maybe some tips as you fill out the application. So first things first, you must register on our website and create an account in order to submit an online application. All applications must be submitted through our online portal, so it's pretty straightforward. If you have any technical difficulties at all, please reach out to me, and I am happy to help you and get your account started. Second is the team experience and qualifications document. So in this part of the application, part one asks you to really identify who is on the team and what their role is. So we want it clearly spelled out. Who is the lead on this? Are there other team members? What is their role? And then finally for part one, what are the years of experience for the team or the lead consultant proposed? Part two is asking you to describe the team's qualifications, including any relevant certifications, trainings, and education. And here you'll see, if applicable, tell us how your team meets the desired qualifications. So where I would really focus on is part two and really demonstrating how your past experience really tells that story of your experience in public procurement, highlight any, these are some kind of like tells too. Obviously, if you were looking for folks that have experience facilitating meetings and building consensus, that's an important value for us as we take on this project. So if you could highlight those kinds of experiences on your team, that would be really great. So any chance, if you have that extra time in filling out the application, I would certainly recommend focusing there. And then moving on, so that's a 5-page max for this application, or for this required document. Resumes. So this is pretty straightforward. We'll need to see a resume for each team member proposed for the project. That also includes subcontractors. So if you know that you're going to be using subcontractors at this time, please include their resume as well. And again, just another tip, we kind of give you a not so subtle hint about what we're looking for. So if you're looking at resumes, try to highlight where in your team's background does it demonstrate those desired qualifications. There's no limit to the resumes page. For sample projects, we'll be asking you to submit a narrative that describes 2 relevant work experiences or projects that illustrate how you've been successful with implementing with previous procurement policy and process refinement projects, including challenges you faced with these projects and how they were addressed. This is all written in the RFQ, but just to highlight, again, we're looking for someone with direct experience in public procurement. If you have that experience with philanthropy, I think that would be great to highlight as one of your projects as well. If not, you can still apply, but be pretty thoughtful with which sample projects you are choosing to highlight. I will say this, so in the team experience, we're asking you to give us a narrative on your team experience, your resumes, and your sample projects. So those are 3 areas where you can really hit all the desired qualifications. So kind of give you multiple opportunities to highlight this, but in different ways. And then finally, or not finally, next up are rates. So on the rates document, you'll need to list the hourly rates for each proposed staff for this project and list any other fees that are applicable. With the rates, just some tips here. Make sure that it's easy to read. Make sure that you're disclosing all of your fees up front. Make sure things are clearly labeled, or if there's a fee listed, make sure there's an explanation for what that might be if it's not clearly understood. Make sure things are adding up. So basically just make it clear and legible for your readers so they don't have to do any guesswork on the budget or the rates that you're proposing. Question came in, are you talking about the checklist? So we included a checklist to help guide you as you fill out the application. All of the required documents are included on the checklist, so you can use the checklist as a guide. And another question, is this a fixed price or time and materials project? And I believe this is a time and materials project, and let me confirm. Yes, it's a time and materials. Okay, so litigation and contract compliance form, we provide you with a form to complete. It's a pretty basic questionnaire. There's no right or wrong answer to that form. We just need some information about your company, agency, or you as an individual to help us in our due diligence as we select a contractor. And then finally, if you have a business license, please submit that. And that's it. So I will move, okay, I'll move on. I don't see any questions coming in about any of the required documents. Again, if you have any, feel free to let me know or email me. So next up, the addendum and checklist. The addendum, we have the right to amend the solicitation by written addendum. I suggest visiting our website and on the Funding Center to see if there have been any changes made to the proposal, to the RFQ. It is your responsibility to ensure that the application does reflect the most updated information, including any information included on the addenda. So again, before you hit submit on your application, just double check on the website to see if there are any changes have been made. I can tell you now that there are not as of today. And there is a checklist. So the checklist is included on the website. Use it to help you fill out your application and just to check off all the necessary and required documents. There's some questions that came in. How do you define philanthropic projects? Would these be grants to public sector recipients providing services? So when I mentioned philanthropic projects as sample projects, what I mainly was referring to were if you've worked with philanthropic agencies in the past, that might be one of the projects you want to highlight. So if you worked with like a foundation, a nonprofit, another non-governmental agency with their procurement, that would be a philanthropic project. Second question, would these be grants to public sector recipients providing services? Not quite sure what that question means. Yeah, okay, yes. So hopefully that provides more clarity. So looking to highlight any projects that you've done with philanthropic agencies. Okay, so on to our selection process. I'll briefly go over what our review process looks like. The first level of review is what we call our internal review. Basically, we're just looking to see if the application is complete. Were all the required documents submitted? Was it submitted on time? Does the proposer meet all or any of the eligibility requirements, and any other due diligence review? It is literally me looking at the proposals just to make sure everything checks off. The next level of level 2 review is when the actual proposal is reviewed by the panelists. The appendix, the review tool scoring criteria is provided in the RFQ. Again, another tip, if you're trying to be strategic, take a look at the weighting criteria to see where the focus is on points and how we will score. Level 2 is, again, where our panelists will take a look at the application and score the application according to that review tool. From there, the highest scoring proposers will move on to level 3, which is an interview round. Those can take place either in person or over the phone. They're typically about an hour long, and we invite key personnel proposed on the project to come in and interview with us. And we anticipate interviews to be taking place October 9th and 10th. And then finally, after the interview process, the highest scoring interviewee will receive the award. We reserve the right to do reference checks. So if we do decide to do reference checks, we will ask you to provide at least two references for us to call.
And please note that we typically do not accept proposals after the due date and time, so be mindful of that. And I'm sure you guys understand as procurement professionals that we adhere to that pretty strictly. And because this is an online application, I highly encourage you to upload any documents you have with plenty of time to spare in case you run across any technical difficulties.
And then here's our timeline. So we released our RFP on August 26th, and now we're having our information session today. Yesterday was actually the final date to submit questions for additional information. So if you got your questions in, I will post them by the end of the day today. And then proposals are due September 20th. And again, we're planning to do interviews October 9th and 10th with an anticipated contract start date of November 21st. So between the October 11th and I would say between definitely early November, you will hear you will hear from us on a final, on the final selection if you receive the RFQ or not. Questions? No questions so far. With that, we've reached the end of our webinar. If there are any questions at all, feel free to ask them in the question box. Looks like we have a question come in. Question, shouldn't the evaluation of rates be based on the points awarded based on the lowest bidder? So,
no, so we are not required to select the lowest bidder. So it's just the most responsible bidder. So what we're going to do is look at the technical aspects that are provided and in accordance to the review tool.
Any other questions? We'll hang on for a few minutes to see if any other questions do come in. Okay. So just to let you know, we will actually be extending the date to submit questions and requests for additional information. Look out on our website for the new date, but if you do have questions today, feel free to submit them to me via email and I will respond to you. But we will determine the new final date to submit questions and post that to the website. Okay, there was a question about the size font for the narrative section. We will actually require them to be written in 11-point font,
Which is stated in the RFQ.
Okay, so haven't had any more questions come in, so we'll just leave it right there. So again, thank you so much for attending this webinar. If you have questions, submit those in today, and we look forward to receiving your application.
And please look out for an addendum as we will be extending the timeline and the deadline to submit additional questions for the solicitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.